Trouble, ladies and gentlemen. The Distortion field. 6 long years have passed since the last Trouble release, Simple Mind Condition, and a lot has happened in those 6 years, and really a lot has happened in the Trouble camp ever since their inception. If you haven't heard of this band, it should be a crime against humanity for you, especially if you're a metal fan. It's one of the more influential bands, and you've never heard of them? Wow. Especially if you like doom metal. You should probably kick yourself. Trouble's early releases in the 1980s are considered to be some of the cornerstones of doom. They've also been considered by some to be the poor man's Black Sabbath. However, that's just criticism alike. I may be a music critic, I may be coverkillernation. However, I recognize the fact that Trouble's a fantastic act. Now, in the past 6 years, they've underwent significant lineup changes, including 2 vocalists. They had the vocalist from Warrior Soul there for a while, and now they have returned to their second vocalist that they had in their history, Kyle Thomas, who was with the band during the latter part of the 1990s. There was no official release that ever featured his voice during that time period after Manic Frustration, so this is the first time, this is the first album that has Kyle Thomas's voice on it in the studio. Now, a lot of people were looking at the Distortion fields with many hopes on their plate. Old school fans were praying that the band would return to its old school doom 1980s roots. Meanwhile, Psychedelic and Stoner fans were hoping that we could see a repeat of Manic Frustration, which is the only album of theirs to sell close to 100,000 copies. It's very hard to find. However, it is a true masterpiece. What they actually got was a little bit of meeting in the middle, and a couple of new tricks up their sleeve as well. Now, this is an album that was produced by Bill Metoyer, and if the name doesn't ring a bell, he does a lot of work with Metal Blade Records. He's done work with Flotsam and Jetsam, if you know that band. I hope that you do. If not, research them. Jason Newsted was a part of that band in the 1980s. But Metoyer is here to produce this album, and for those of you who know Metoyer, he is one that definitely has a signature to him, and that's the fact that he really allows bands to organically engage themselves and kind of take on some new creative challenges. If you listen to Flotsam and Jetsam's work, you note that as time progresses onward, you hear a little bit more of their southwestern roots in their songs, including some shades of country. Eric A.K. of Flotsam and Jetsam has actually released a country album, and you kind of hear that idea a little bit in this Trouble album on one song, which is Have I Told You, which easily could be redone by a guy such as a Johnny Cash or a George Jones, if either were still alive, and made into a potent country song. But instead it serves as a great metal ballad. For the remainder of this album, we have what would be considered a mix of the doom and the psychedelia sounds that Trouble has been known for throughout their career. And that's actually the meaning in the middle that I think a lot of people should be okay with. Not to mention, it keeps both sides happy. Now, the music itself that's on this is phenomenal. That's the one thing that I really enjoy about this molding and meeting in the middle. You kind of don't know what's coming next, so you're excited to move on to the next track. Whenever the doom comes, it's oftentimes laced with a little bit of, well, some people may call it progression, but I'm not going to say that. It's met with a couple of different tempo changes that really engages one side to the other, the doom to this slightly psychedelic, the psychedelic back to the doom. Now, we're not going to see anything that's quite as grandiose in scale as their cover of the Monkeys the Porpoise song, but it's pretty damn close, especially with the track One Life. As you move on to this album, you start to see a lot more of a forward and direct approach. It's something where not until you reach the track Butterfly that it really tends to expand out a little bit more. But that shouldn't discourage you. This is all really, really good stuff. This is an album that's very strong from track 1 to its final track. It's one that flows very, very nicely, and in spite of the fact that it's kind of a grab bag of 2 different styles, it works. The reason why it works is because even though Trouble has remained tremendously underrated throughout their career, they've performed both styles of music that they've kind of expertly crafted extremely well at both periods of time, and they still can do it. Now, there's a bit of a controversy with this band. A lot of people have called these guys white metal as opposed to black metal, considering some of their early lyrical qualities. Now, while I'm not dismissing that completely with this album, as some of the lyrics do seem to suggest a little bit of what would be considered a white metal approach, it's not something that's very poignant. It's also not something that's in your face. And that's also something that shouldn't discourage people from picking up this release. If you can find the Distortion Fields in your local stores, I know that my FOA covers it, but it only had 2 copies and one of them's already bought. But if you can find it, definitely pick this album up. This is a band that's long been trailblazing on the doom metal / stoner / psychedelic scene, and this is definitely a band that is very, very worthy of your pickup. Sure, you're going to get a lot of reminiscence to Black Sabbath, you're going to get a lot of reminiscence to Deep Purple, you're going to have some shades of Ronnie James Dio and Rainbow, but those are all things that you should really want. Those are all things that are true to heavy metal's roots in general. And Trouble themselves are extremely important to heavy metal's roots in general. This is a great album. I give it an 8.5 out of 10. I recommend it to everybody who is watching this video. And for those of you who have decided just to watch this on a whim without even knowing who this band is, I commend you for this. Because this is going to be the start of potentially your new addiction. Pick it up.